Good afternoon, thanks for joining me. Today for Senior Crafternoon, we're going to be using ink to marble watercolor paper. I'm going to go over everything you have in your kit. You should have one of these metal pans. This is what we're going to be using to do our marbling. You should have a couple of colors of ink. So you'll have some black Sumi ink, and then you'll have some of this India ink in a couple of different colors. And you should have a couple of brushes and some pieces of watercolor paper. You are going to need to grab a little bowl for water, and you're going to want to add a couple of drops of dish soap to this and mix it up. So that will be used with one of your brushes, and then you'll also need something to put your ink on if you're using the different colors. So if you don't have a palette, just an old plate, something that you're definitely just going to use for crafting, not for eating on. And if you want to protect your work surface, just put a towel under this or something, tablecloth, so that you protect your table. And we are going to be rinsing off our final prints, so you want to be either near a sink, or if you have another one of these pans that you can spare, again, just to use for crafting, you can fill that with water to use as your rinsing pan. And then maybe set out some paper towels next to you so that when you're done with your prints, you can just set them aside on the paper towels to dry. The first thing you're going to do is set up your workspace. We're going to need to rinse the papers off, so if you have another one of these pans that you can use, again, just for crafting, you can fill it up with water and make that your rinsing tub, or do this near the sink and then just rinse this off at the sink. So you're going to fill one of these with about 1/2 inch to 1 inch of water. You'll need to get something set up with your ink on it, and then have your water with a couple of drops of dish soap over here. So what we're going to do is just alternate. We're going to go back and forth with the ink and then the soapy water. So we're going to fill our brush with some ink. And when you do this, you want to make sure that you just touch the surface. If you poke through the surface, the ink's going to drop down to the bottom. It's not going to make a difference in your final print. It just makes it a little bit harder to see what's going on the surface. So hopefully I don't do that, but I probably will. And then you're going to get your other brush in your other hand. So just start by placing some ink on the surface of the water. And this is really light, so it's hard to see. You can see I dropped it to the bottom. And then you're going to get your soapy water and just place it right in the center. Again, put some ink in the middle, and then some soapy water. Hopefully you can see it spreading out, so it's making rings. And I'm just going back and forth. And you do have to use a decent amount of the ink for it to show up, so I really fill my brush before I do this. Now if you're going to use more than one color on the same print, you will need to get a brush per color. So if you've got any old brushes from past crafts, go ahead and grab those. I've got some pink over here. It's not a round brush, so it's not doing exactly what I want it to, but it's all going to be mixed up later on anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. And do another ring over on this side. Right, and then you can either just put your paper down, or you can turn your brush over and kind of move the ink. And then just drop your paper in. I'm using an old piece of scrap paper, that's why this has marks on the back. Okay, and then you're going to take this and rinse it off. So I have my paper rinsed off. You can see it's still wet. If you blot it dry with a paper towel or something, you will probably pull some of the ink off, so it's best to just set these aside and let them dry on their own. You can see the pattern is really subtle, but it is there. So you can experiment with using more or less ink depending on how your final work comes out. I did end up dipping it into the water, so there's some on the back too. But it's still light enough that you could write on it or use it for stationery. So that is pretty much it. Hopefully you enjoyed this craft. If you have any questions, you can always email me. Thanks for joining me today.